Hi everyone, it's Ian here. I can see there's a few attendees dropping in now. So instead of putting it on pause for a wee bit today, I'll just go ahead and I'll do a brief intro to what we're going to do today. And then we'll call the amazing Steve Ward in to tell us all about fans. So this is the second in the series of the Recruitment Marketing by Real Marketing Pros webinar series. And what we're doing today is we're talking to people that have been at the front end of marketing and recruitment marketing for years and years and years. We're talking about the strategies and the tactics that they use so that people like me, people like yourselves can learn from them, stop hacking together our own methods and actually learn from the pros. Now, I'm not saying we're going to stop hacking together altogether, because if we learn from the pros and then we continue hacking, we'll just come up with something better and better and better. So my name's Ian Hamilton. I am the CEO of Recruitment Bot. We build chatbots to help businesses build their businesses. So we build both menu-driven and fully artificial intelligence-powered chatbots for recruitment agencies and for in-house recruitment teams. You'll notice that I am in a bit of a different office today. It's not the normal place that I shoot my videos from, but I am in the office of a telecoms business. So if anything fails here today, I've got the support behind me to make sure that it all comes good. So hopefully nothing will fail. Over the last week, you'll have received a few emails about this webinar and a bit of other stuff that's going on. If any of you received double emails, my apologies. My email provider has been messing me about a wee bit. We're in the middle of changing all of that, so it'll be kind of brought back in line very quickly. So enough of that. Let's get into the meat of this webinar. We are here to listen to the knowledge of Steve Ward, the original practicing social media recruiter. Okay, so Steve, why don't you just get started today by telling us a wee bit about yourself, about what you do.
Thank you, Ian. Nice to be on this. Hello, everyone. So look, I'm Steve Ward. I have recruited for a long time, more than half my life, which is kind of scary. We're talking about sort of it's approaching 24 years, which is bonkers. And as Ian alluded, the phrase that gets sort of bandied around now and again about me is that original. I borrowed it from somebody who wrote this once, who said Steve is the original practicing social recruiter. And I think that was because it was way back in 2008. I stumbled across a CV that had social media in the job title and didn't know what it meant. So I started, I did a Google search to identify what the hell a social media account manager was, found a company who were hiring one, got in touch with the company to say, I've never seen one of these before, but you're hiring one. So what do you think? They said, wow, yeah. We hired this job yesterday, but he looks great. We would love to talk to him. Here's another job. Why don't you help me with this one? So I was running an agency at the time, and it was a social media analyst, and I didn't know what one of those was either. So, and I told him so, and he said, "That's fine. I'll come and have a beer. You're the first agency to bother to ask me what one is. Come and have a beer. We're going to talk through the industry of social media, what's going to happen with social media, and how it all works, and I know also importantly what social media analyst is. I filled that role for him. In fact, I filled it twice over because he couldn't believe I found him a shortlist of 3 in 2008, 3 social media analysts. And he said from that point, he said, whatever happens from here, Steve, he says, I don't know what you're doing now, and I don't know what your specific area is, but this thing's going to grow. This social media thing's going to grow. You need to get involved with this because you get it. You understand what I'm talking about, and you should get specialized in it. But he says one thing. He says you do. He says if you're going to go down this route as a recruiter, don't look like a bloody recruiter. The last thing to do is to look like a bloody recruiter. So yeah, so I got trained in social media strategy in 2008 by a really nice guy down in Brighton called Raj Anand. And then who'd been running a social agency himself, not a recruitment agency, but a marketing agency. And I started using social media tactics, social media marketing tactics, visibility, reputation, and engagement kind of tactics online with the burgeoning, growing audience of digital professionals, marketing communications professionals who are specializing or taking on these new social media roles. And that's what I did. I ran an agency called Cloud9. for up until 2.5 years ago. It merged with a larger company and I moved away. And in the last 2.5 years, I've probably predominantly done more stuff in-house with companies on talent attraction, because that's where I have a big passion and enjoyment about the way that candidates engage with us. And I've been helping them attract talent in the smartest and best kind of ways, and also helping recruitment agencies understand how they can better impact the market through social reputation as well. And during that little journey, I've obviously become to adopt different methodologies that seem to kind of get the brain straight about how you use social and other digital channels to best attract talent. So that's where I kind of sit now, basically, as a guy who helps organizations use digital better. But alongside that, I'm also the non-executive director of a social media agency for recruitment called Hoxo Media. And I'm also a partner of Candidate ID, which is talent pipelining software, which also does all the things that I've done for years in a slightly more automated and logical way. And so what's exciting now is what the degree of maturity we now have in social recruiting that maybe was not there over the years that I was trying to be the best I could be at it. So that's where I am as we sit today.
So you're busy?
Yeah, it is. Well, do you know what? I go from a stage of I'm pulled from pillar to post, frankly. Yeah. I think that's where, when you do something like this, the different requests you get for different things are wide and varied. And I'm also the REC's social media and branding agency branding trainer as well. So another like feather in the cap or another flag to wave as well. And it means you get asked to do all sorts of weird and wonderful things and some things that are pretty obvious, but it makes for a fun life. Yeah.
All right, cool. So Steve, listen, one of the first times I came across you, we were talking and there was people having little jabs about this whole idea of fans.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, I started to look into more and more about your background. I was pretty impressed. I started listening to the talks and the webinars that you do, where you talk about generating fans rather than applicants. It intrigued me. So let's move the jobs aside. There's always the haters be haters and all that, eh? Yeah. Let's move that aside and let's talk about the tactics let's talk about why, first of all. We'll always start with why. So why do you focus on fans rather than candidates?
Well, a lot of it stems from, I've been fortunate to work in the industry this last 10 years. And what I mean by the industry, the industry I supplied and the talent that I was finding was social and digital professionals. And what that seemed to allow people to do, when somebody does a job as a social media manager or a digital communications manager or those sort of things, they're often the voice of a brand. So they're behind when we go on Twitter and shout at a company or all that kind of stuff, or when we see things that are pumping out from companies, there's somebody behind that who's running that Twitter feed, who's creating those campaigns, who's doing the interesting stuff and the videos and things we see on YouTube, etc. And those people are the social media managers, and they're the content creators within those. And the perfect scenario we used to find as an agency, and the very first question I used to do and train my recruiters to do when we sat in front of somebody or spoke to somebody online or in any kind of way, is the first question we would always ask is, let's start with the dream job, right? So before we consider what your CV has, what actual jobs are out there, and what is realistic, the number one question always is, what is the dream job? What is the company, the kind of company or the industry you would absolutely choose to work for that get you jumping out of bed in the morning in the excitement to go to work? And it was a very easy question to ask because it was for most people, it's quite an easy question to answer. And what we would do as Cloud9 is our first instinct was kind of like, right, that is our first agenda. But what it allowed us to do is also create hooks on individuals. And those hooks on individuals, when a client gives you a new role and they come to you and let's say it's something like, I use a great example. Let's use something like the Guardian newspaper. When we used to get work from the Guardian newspaper, they would come to me and say, right, yeah, we want a content creator for our female affairs section, our kind of, lifestyle kind of areas or whatever, and particularly focused on female fashion or whatever else it might be. You know what I mean? And what it would mean was we'd be like, female fashion, content creation. There are, and we'd have these almost little mini verticals of people who have passion points around the subject. And ironically, those clients would ask for the passion points. The very first social media job I ever got after that first client said to me, right, we're doing work for Nokia. And we were going to hire all these people who do social media management and community management for Nokia. We said, we don't want people, but the first rule, aside of their skills, but we can kind of work on the skills. The first rule is they have to know what all the Nokia phones are like. And they have to know what the mobile market is like. And they have to be a geek in the mobile phone market. So ideally, it needs to be people who've blogged about it, people who've worked in like Car Phone Warehouse or some of those. And you'd get that. And you'd get this thing where like, and I could see where they were going with it. I could see where they said, because we can't represent our brand online, the brand that we're supporting online effectively, if we're just employing anybody who can happen to run a social media channel. It has to be somebody who can speak with passion and knowledge about the brand. And so this became a second nature thing to me, that you kind of aim for the perfect match related not just to skill, but also to the heart element, the emotional connection with the product or service. So then when I went into in-house, and I don't think I'd ever really considered it about being a fans exercise, a fans hiring exercise, until I sat with a company 2 years ago called Velocity and identified that when I went to market, and this wasn't a sexy brand, and this isn't a sexy company with, it's not Nokia, it's not the Guardian newspaper, it's not Nike. This is a reasonably unknown brand doing B2B tech content marketing. And when I started to reach out to the market to try and get to the grips with what the perception of this company was, which is what I do when I first sit inside a company, what I noticed quite quickly was when I said, I'm recruiting for Velocity, people would come back, from my network and kind of go, oh, Doug's company. I'm like, oh, yeah, you know who I mean by Doug, one of the co-founders. And oh, yeah, we love Doug. Doug is, we love Doug. He's, I love what he's got to say about the world. I love what he's got to, I love his passion with us. Now, the irony was Doug's a real quiet guy. He's quite a high copywriter background kind of guy, but but what I noticed was he genuinely had fans. He genuinely had he kind of like, fanboys and fangirls, people who wanted to work with Doug, right? I mean, they were, and I kind of, this twigged in me to kind of, it took me back to the things that I'd been recruiting for, to go, this is a repeating thing. And I used a phrase then about, why don't we identify fans of Doug? And start to attract fans of Doug, because what was happening was that people were saying, I want to work with Doug because Doug is interesting and we love he's a kind of guru in the space. And it kind of opened up this little thought process as to kind of like, actually, yeah, I want to talk to people who desperately want to work with Doug, or desperately want to work with this organization, rather than just anybody who needs a job because we've got one open, who happens to have the right skill set. Because what typically then happens is you identify people then who need a job, will do a job, but then because they have no passion, they don't stay forever in the job. And we have a major retention challenge these days. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. So before we go too much further into that, attracting fans, right? We've touched upon the dream job. We've touched upon going after the people that would see the job as their dream job. What is a dream job? What defines a dream job in people's head? Probably different for everybody, but give us a bit of an idea. It's not salary.
No, it's not salary. No, it's not.
What in your head defines a dream job?
Oh, and because I've seen it so many examples now, is the dream job is the one where I always consider it to be the one where when you wake up in the morning, you kind of go, I'm really looking forward to today. I'm proud. So the dream. Some people land in dream jobs they never thought would be dream jobs as well, and so the signals of that are their natural expressions. Another great quick example of this is a client who used to do a lot of recruitment for was Kaplan International Colleges. They do online e-learning kind of stuff, and again from the outset look a reasonably dry company doing e-learning, language learning around the world, but a phenomenal company, huge company. And I placed quite a lot of people in roles in London there, never on the basis of, oh, this is your dream job. We didn't, it was never seemed to be the sort of thing that would be the dream job, although it had a lot of great components that made it very attractive from a job, 9 to 5, the things you do kind of thing, point of view. But what I noticed, you know, a lot of my candidates and clients over the years became Facebook friends of mine, and just because of the reputation and network and closeness we had with the industry. And what I started to notice was that people who I'd placed in Kaplan were posting all sorts of stuff on Facebook about some of the stuff they're doing in the day, and the little exercises they go through, and the little effects of what they've done. And I said, it's quite a social media campaign you guys are doing to kind of, you know, a bit of a branding campaign. They're like, oh no, I'm just posting it because it's brilliant. I'm just proud to work here. I'm proud to, and that was a real kind of eureka thing as well, to go, when somebody is prepared to post something on Instagram, Facebook, social, in any kind of way, that just because they just really enjoying, get a kick out of the things they do, not because their boss said, really nice if we could post on Facebook a lot more about our company. It's the authentic enthusiasm to kind of get that impression that kind of that people want to get up in the morning and do the job that they actually have a heart for. So I think it's the combination of the professional connection and the emotional connection. And when you find the combination of the professional connection, the emotional connection, I think you have a little bit of a silver bullet in regard to identifying people who would be great in your organization rather than people who will be functional in your organization. So I think that probably captures it, the combination between professional and emotional affinity.
Yeah. Okay. So I often talk about the emotive factors, the intrinsic kind of things that make people want to work in a business.
Yes.
And a lot of what you're talking about there, about the message getting out there and authentically representing your brand and the messages those people are putting out there. So, you know, anything from social responsibility to work-life balance to culture of the office to all of these different things add to that feeling of that looks like it could be a job that I really want and could turn into a dream job. Let's admit, we all have this dream of, oh, I would love to be the, I don't know, global head of talent acquisition for Apple.
Right.
Or I would like to be the talent technology innovation officer for Google. That sounds pretty cool. There's not too many of those jobs going about. So what we really aim for is jobs that we think we will really like and that will in the future make an impact to our careers.
That's right. And I think the other thing to think of is, I think, you know, the thing that I would always say when I ask the dream job question, it's very rarely does somebody say a major brand when they see dream job.
Really?
Very, very rarely would somebody say, because in our own little geeky surrounds, right, we all have our geeky corners, right, that we are passionate about. My probably number one passion is cricket. I mean, God, if I could do a job doing something along the lines of what I do in that industry, that would be amazing. You know, I past the stage where I really care about that as much as I used to. But hey, look, if the ECB came to me tomorrow and I want to do something, we want to do something interesting on talent attraction, we want to do some cool stuff, I'd be picking up the phone. I'd be chatting to these guys because it's something that I'm passionate about that probably 95% of the rest of the world are not passionate about. So the things that sort of interest me are not necessarily when somebody says I don't want to go and work for Google, because the reality is Google have got a lot of jobs and they've also got a lot of applicants. But you know, but actually the reality is people don't have the same emotional connection to Google that they have to something that's much more personal to them. So I think I would say Apple have got a dotted line to what I'm talking about, because I think we attend this product we're kind of, you know, fanboys and fangirls of and all that kind of, but what are the things that I've identified slightly more? You know, when you think of something like Velocity as an example, I was working with a data company earlier this year on a similar project. What we're not looking at, if you consider Apple and you say, right, let's start recruiting fans of Apple. Well, where the hell do you start? I mean, you know, you've hardly narrowed the field down, have you? Really? You've not turned it into
the Apple Store.
I
wonder how many people try it.
But the irony is that I've always, ironically, this is a dream scenario I've always looked at and said, right, I know there's a data challenge that means this is not feasible. But the reality is, again, maybe not something as big as Apple, but hey, why not Apple? But certainly something, I don't know, something like Jimmy Choo, if you're Jimmy Choo shoes, or if you're, you particularly buy a certain brand of clothes all the time, or whatever, or a certain brand of coffee all the time, or whatever it is. And our existence now online is such that they know that we're fans, right? So product marketers know the things that we are fans of these days. They know the things that we repeat by, they know our behaviors and all this kind of stuff. Wouldn't it be great to kind of have if a lady bought, as I assume these ladies that generally have Jimmy Choo shoes, I don't know, they might have some bloke Jimmy Choo shoes, I'm not sure. But anyway, if somebody buys Jimmy Choo shoes 3 times during the course of the year, what about on the 3rd time they buy it? There'll be a thing that pops up to kind of go, we notice you love Jimmy Choo shoes. Hey, look, we're hiring at Jimmy Choo. Come and join us. Here's some of the, here's a link to some of the roles that we're hiring for at Jimmy Choo. You can guarantee there's going to be a very high percentage chance that focused advert is going to hit people, is going to get followed through. They're going to click through because they're going to, oh yeah, I love Jimmy Choo shoes. Yeah, absolutely. Let me see. They may then get the second layer that says, well, there's no job that really, but great. You've just turned somebody from purely a customer, a retail customer, into a talent, somebody's now in your talent pipeline, because they've clicked to confirm an intention to work for your company, or a desire to work for your company. And they've done it through a source that says they're genuinely a fan. And we're talking about a repeat purchase kind of thing, a repeat purchaser. And that's, to me, that's the real dream scenario.
That's
where
cool.
you can
That's cool.
CRM into recruitment CRM. Wow. I mean, that's kind of cool. Well, the reality is, at the same time, is that there are fans of people who do unsexy stuff, right? There are fans of things that you or I might say, what the fuck? I mean, there's nothing, excuse language. I don't know your boundaries on language in this webinar, but most people would go, yeah, that's not interesting. That's kind of geeky and dry and rubbish. But actually the point is, every corner of society has geeky people who admire those little geeky things, but never ever consider that they would choose a role or would aspire to a role until somebody says to them, hey, look, we notice you read our blog. We notice you comment on our things that's in this little geeky corner. We love that you do that. That's brilliant. Therefore, you also might consider, we like hiring people like you. Here's our roles, whatever. And that emotional journey between identification of somebody who shows what I call fanhood. They don't necessarily consider they're fans. They're just followers. They're just people who interact online or wherever it is they do. But taking them through that journey of kind of like, well, we notice you like this kind of stuff, and you seem to talk about this stuff with eloquence and interest. You might want to come and work. If you like what we say, you may want to come and work with us. Follow this link and have a look at some of the jobs we've got. And to me, that's like a eureka moment in recruitment in a way, because it goes away from the open funnel of let's stick an advert and try and find all those technologists or whatever it is that we're trying to aim for, to actually kind of like, well, let's forensically look at the people who already give signals of, one, the technical, whatever that technology is. It might not be technology, you know what I mean? It's all sorts of corners of geekiness, but also how can we line those people up with people and people who have an engagement with our brand already, even if our brand is unsexy. And why don't we ask the question to these people first, rather than go to a wide market and ask people who have no idea who we are? It just seems to be the most logical way to do stuff. And so I went to the program with a couple of companies to do very much this.
I think you've just given me, and I'll co-author it with you. Absolutely. You've just given me my next ebook, blog article, whatever it might be. And some of this from my aspect might be slightly more thought stuff. Yeah. So you maybe done some of it. But what if a Vodafone has the LinkedIn Insights pixel on their website and is able to track that somebody that will be relevant to the technology side of their business has been visiting their site over the last while as a potential consumer, and is able then to start putting adverts out to them because this person has an affinity with the brand, has a knowledge about the products, has a desire to do business with that company. What if you then bring them into your talent pipeline as a really high value candidate and start to influence them to thinking about your business as a career? Whoa, that's quite special, Steve.
Yeah. Well, I think
that's
it really,
quite special.
Really is. I think, and this is what I go back to the fact we now live in an age where, when I was working for, as Cloud9, and we were identifying people with natural affinity, because we did it just because we thought we did good recruitment, right? We always wanted to consider that if we hand 3 candidates to our client who asked us to hire somebody for them, the 3 candidates there must be a mutual wow factor between the candidates and so from both sides. When we go to the candidate and say, have a look at this, they go, oh, yeah, absolutely. Heart starts racing, and the reverse way around. Now that magic was a very manual exercise. It was but now we have the data, the digital capability to identify, absolutely identify the people who are showing signals, the signs of and we can even layer those. I mean, we obviously know with things like candidate ID, you can layer them from a point of view of career or hire readiness, but the same funnel applies to engaged human being, a fanhood, effectively. If we know the sites, right, that we spend the most time on for the things that we're most passionate about. I'll to go back to cricket again. I'll look on certain sites regularly. I'll be looking for cricket equipment for my boys. I'll be looking to read the latest test scores on here or whatever the news is or whatever. So if people are watching my activity, they could start to realize that I would be, a great customer, but also potentially a great employee. The employee bit is the bit that people don't think about through that process. They don't think about, because we're conditioned to treat every open job as a new project every time. We're conditioned to just go out to market with a new advert, with a new request to a recruiter or whatever else it might be, without looking who's in our pool, who's in our tribe. And I think the tribe phrase is really important in this, because that's what we try to build as companies. Is we want tribes of people who are passionate about the purpose and the direction of the organization, the products that we do and the services we provide. And that's surely what we're aiming for in more companies, particularly in an age where retention all the time dipping and dipping and dipping. Everybody's got carrots being dangled under their nose on LinkedIn all day long. Here's another job. Why don't you come and join us? Why don't we do this? Etc. And what you therefore want as organizations is a higher percentage of people who are so passionate and feel rewarded to work for your company, just not by financially, but just emotionally rewarded, that they would rebuff every approach. And that's got to be the goal from a recruitment perspective, or from a business perspective, I should say, and an HR and retention perspective, because it improves then the performance of the business. And of course, equally, if you're hiring people who are engaged in your business in that kind of way, they are naturally going to perform better, because they come in with a bit of a skip and a leap into work in the morning, and therefore much more energy into whatever it is they do.
I have a slightly different way of describing that, and so we all talk about having a culture in a business.
Yes.
And developing a culture of being passionate about what we do, being passionate about customer service, whatever that culture might be. And to me, there's always comes down to one thing: the first 4 letters of the word culture. Now, remove the negative connotations of that. To build a culture, you have to have a cult. You have to have a figurehead in the organization that talks passionately every day about the key facts. You need to have a reasonable group of people around that figurehead that passionately believe in every single thing that is talked about within that organization, passionately believes in the direction forward. To have the next larger group of people around that think, that's a good idea. To have the next larger group of people around that to be going, I'll conform. And it's about having that kind of layered within the organization, so that whenever you're bringing people into the organization, representing that culture and having people that go, hey, I love that culture, so I would like to join that as an employer. And so they come into the top few tiers. And all of a sudden, you've got this organization that moves forward in the right way. I remember starting with Hayes as a recruiter, and the training was fantastic. And literally within 6 months of working in Hayes, used the term, if you cut me, I would bleed blue.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
you were a Hayes recruiter for life. Now,
Yeah.
9 months later, I wasn't a Hayes recruiter because I moved on elsewhere. But
Yeah.
you still
And
had
the
that
feel,
feeling,
I know.
this is
And
where I'm going to be, you know.
And I don't know whether you've ever spent any time with people from Apple, but I mean, I've met some people in HR and recruitment in Apple, and we, you know, we mentioned Apple earlier, but it's a great example, obviously, of a company who've gone from and grew and grew and grew, and also, and they have what you call a cult in the way that it's definitely a tribe mentality. It's certainly a cult mentality. They all talk the same language. There are.
Yep.
You know, and not in a scary, spooky kind of way, but in a kind of a values-driven kind of way, a real values-driven. They understand. I mean, obviously, the biggest rule in Apple is never to sell. When they take people as graduates, that those people in this are not salespeople; they're only customer service people. They're never taught to sell. If you say no, you walk away and leave a great experience and all that kind of stuff. They never sell to you. It's part of their philosophy. But also, but everything they communicate is. And as you see one of these people to the next person, they all speak the same phrases and same languages because it's embedded in them from a cultural point of view. But what you also do get, I mean, I know we alluded to Apple as one of our examples earlier, the sort of but these people are fans. These people are really engaged with the company, you know.
So that's a brilliant opportunity, Steve. Brilliant opportunity, because what we're talking about here is we're talking about people, millions, if not billions, of people that yearly buy Apple products.
Yeah.
But Apple never sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we change that into the kind of terminology for recruitment, that would literally be like having a business that could attract enough people that they never needed to proactively go out and approach, or they didn't necessarily need to push their jobs out far and wide on job boards, on social media. People would naturally come to them. And this is where we transfer to talking about fans.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So give us let's start from the start, right? So we've got a number of people on this webinar as attendees that are maybe recruiting for councils.
Yeah.
Recruiting for bigger brands, recruiting for smaller brands.
Yeah.
So let's start from the start. How do you start thinking about how do I attract fans? What's the first step in that journey?
The first step is to look at what you've already got. So the point is, every organization, unless obviously you've only just started, and therefore you maybe don't have it depends on how good your marketing is from the outset, obviously, but every organization, certainly, and I've worked with, generally with, since my Cloud9 days, I've generally worked with what can generally be considered unsexy companies. They're not big brands. These are companies going through a growth stage, but don't have what you'd call mass branding, huge. In fact, actually, they were probably good companies. They weren't that great at branding by all accounts. They didn't really focus a lot of time in it. They were at growth stage. They are going through, the priority is customer. Their recruitment becomes a lower priority. It would become until this moment when they realize they need to kind of grow. And anyway, but what we would do is we look straight away at what they had already. And I, with Velocity, this is a great example that I didn't start that way. I went out first to start kind of getting a feel for what people generally thought about them. And then when I realized that actually a lot of these people were already engaged with the company, more so than I expected, and particularly through Doug as an example, one of the co-founders, I started to then spend some time looking at who was following our LinkedIn page. If anybody chooses to follow a company's LinkedIn page, then it's an indication. And obviously I'm not talking about the recruiters, and I'm not talking about salespeople. So move those people aside, possibly. But certainly fellow professionals from the industry, if they've chosen to follow that LinkedIn page, then that's quite a statement. Because we don't just willy-nilly follow LinkedIn pages all day long. It's kind of so I've always thought that was quite a signal, as well as their Twitter page. Try and identify who these individuals are. And then the next layer beyond that is who of those individuals who regularly comments, engages, and shares the content they put out. Not just so the company. So we would look at that kind of thing. Then we'd look at some of the people, some of the leaders of the organization. So then we take Doug, we take Stan, we take Neil, or we'll take Marcia, and we'll start to look at these people and go, right, who's following those people online? Who is commenting and agreeing, and particularly sharing the content that they produce, and telling and amplifying stories that came out of Velocity. Who are those people? And then what I'd start to do is just I'd make them my first. We had, quite a growth curve, but quite difficult roles to fill. But I'd start with those people. They were the people I wanted to. So I start with the identification of what we already have, and the conversation with those people. I mean, like I say, most recruitment conversations are reasonably unsuccessful. I mean, we most approaches to most candidates are prickly, unimpressed, leave me alone type of calls. And, now and again we get we hit a bullet and we hit one and it's great. But actually we do a lot of work doing the negative responses to get to the positive responses. In this scenario, there is no such thing as a negative response, because the journey for the recruitment person is one that goes out there to speak to these people and going to go, look, I notice, you're engaged with Velocity's content, blah, blah, look, exciting times. We're going through growth. You seem to like a lot of stuff that Velocity does. We're hiring. I mean, would you be interested in having a little browse of some of the roles we're looking for at the moment or whatever? And the natural response is one of, yes, please. And so the journey is not it's not a sales conversation. It's one of kind of like, you're already kind of part of our tribe. But have you ever thought, and actually a lot of it, and here's the other thing that's remarkable, I found in responses, people don't think they can possibly work for the company they admire the most. People are scared to think that I was sat at a table in an event earlier this year with a lady from Mercedes-Benz, a TA lady from Mercedes-Benz, who was talking about the challenges hiring engineers, for their cars. And what she said, the common response from candidates when they approached them is they didn't think they were good enough to work for Mercedes-Benz. They were like, wow, yeah, but I'm not worthy, is the kind of I'm not worthy. And ironically, this was the same even with a company like Velocity. Sometimes you talk to people and go, if you say to somebody, we'd love to consider you to work for our organization, their response is one of like, hell yeah, please, yeah, I'd love to have that conversation. Or, hey, look, the worst conversation is, God, I love you guys, but hey, look, I've got a real great job at the minute. I don't need to move. I don't need to go anywhere right now, blah, blah, but boy, keep in touch with me. I mean, seriously, keep in touch with me. So those conversations as a starting point, that's exciting. So that's the starting point, is look at what you already have, who's already in our tribe. The next part of that is also then you can't just rely solely, particularly for a smaller company like that with a quite a tight tribe. You've then got to acquire new fans. You've got to acquire growth of tribe to foster the kind of growth that you need to, and also to give yourself enough options of hire ready or partially hire ready candidates. So the next stage we went on is kind of like, right, okay, so we've identified that the number one source of fanhood within Velocity is Doug and what Doug's got to say about the world. So if we know he's got a bubble of active fans already, which we've already sort of started the journey of communication with, that means that there's probably also another bunch that aren't as visual. You have to make an assumption that if there's a very visible, loud bunch of fans, there's also those fans that are less visible and less loud, but equally appreciative. So then we go on a journey of going to go, right, first piece of content we write to tell the story of where Velocity is going is Doug. Doug is friend. Remove Velocity's side. Remove me as a recruiter. Nobody's a fan of me. Those people aren't fans of me. It's that thing that goes straight to the hiring manager, the director, the company owner, and so although the content, the focus was Doug. This is Doug writing about, and he wasn't talking about jobs. He was talking about his take on the industry now. Now, what's really important in this, the only way you can identify fans is to piss a few people off in the process. So you've got to, obviously as content marketers, what Doug was great at, he said, anything we put out there has to represent our voice as an organization. And we're strong with our voice. And one of the reasons why we identified fans is because there are people in that tribe. So he'll be very, very divisive when he writes. He writes with the purpose of pissing a few people off, because the other people who you don't piss off, they kind of go, yeah, go Doug, that kind of approach. And whereas if you write tepid content that sits on the fence without any kind of strong opinion, then you don't win anybody. you kind of get a small kind of like little ripple of applause type of thing. Whereas if you write content that is, this is what we stand for. I know you're not going to agree with it. Not a lot of you aren't going to agree with it, but that's fine. Then you get people who cheer and go on your behalf. And so they're the ones we draw in. So we wrote a bit of content that was fantastic, and it drew us a bunch of candidates. Not many, but we didn't want many. That's fine. I think it drew us 8 people who actually then at the bottom, at my little bit at the bottom, say, hey, look, if you agree with Doug, you may want to come and work with Velocity. Come on. And 8 people emailed me. That doesn't sound very many. But hey, look, we only wrote a blog. I mean, it took about an hour of Doug's time to write a piece of content, and then another hour maybe just to make sure we packaged it correctly and put it out there. And there are loads of comments and interest actually on this blog on LinkedIn. It was really good. But 8 people followed that link and sent me an email. All 8 of those people could absolutely have worked inside Velocity. 6 of them we interviewed. 4 of them we hired. Now, 4 were hired over the course of 6 months because some of those people we didn't have the right role right there for them then, and equally maybe vice versa. But that was the start of a journey. We found fans. We'd found fans that said, I like this guy. I like what he's got to say. And so and obviously there was a ripple of other people as well that obviously just weren't ready to, go commented, engaged, and shared it and all that. And then started to read the next pieces of content we wrote and all that kind of stuff. But the point was that we were acquiring fans by making sure that we continued the voice of the embedded element of the company, and we took it out to market and told more people about that embedded thing. And we did it again and again and again, not just with Doug. We used other leaders in the organization. We put out Doug's message was broader. The other guys wrote very niche content, very niche. Marketing automation was one of the areas of growth for the company. They were so demanding of who they needed to hire for these roles that they were going to hire for. I worked out there were only 50 people in the UK who are actually capable, both qualified and capable to do those roles. I'd loved it. Give me those 50. That's great. And we wrote a very specific piece of geeky content that hit the emotional heart of those people. We didn't want to interest anybody else. What we wanted was fans of what they were talking about in relation to this very specific area of new technology within marketing. And we hired 3 people, 2.5 people, one was part-time in the end, who came from Canada to come and work in the role. And it was just because it was directed at people who give 2 hoots about what it is you do, what you say, and what you stand for, and what your voice is. And that, for me, that's the journey of identifying the fans you already have, but also growing fans from people you didn't already have, and building your fan base effectively to have a better talent pool, a stronger talent pool and pipeline.
Very good. What you're talking about there, Steve, is so powerful. I remember back to the days of working in Wood Group. We had a CEO that was a big name in the industry, Bob Keeler, very vocal about safety. We got him talking about safety an awful lot on LinkedIn. Some of his blogs were read and liked and shared. I think we had the biggest was about 60,000 interactions on it. Our headhunter sat there for a couple of days just watching the comments roll in. And spoke to CIOs, spoke to CFOs, spoke to financial directors, spoke to head of operations, and hired directly from that blog. People going, Bob, what you're talking about is brilliant. I believe in everything that you're saying. And the next thing the headhunter did was he reached out and said, hey, I saw your comment. Let's have a chat. And he hired. And the conversation there is brilliant. And you know what? This brings me around to something that I've been talking about recently. So, I talk a lot about recruitment marketing and about it, how it's the way ahead and pipelining and, and candidate ID and the new technologies that are out there that are making this possible for us these days, right?
Yes.
And the biggest thing here is that we're not saying stop advertising jobs. We're not saying stop headhunting. We're not saying stop sourcing. We're not saying any of this. But what we are saying is that if you want to do any of that in a really, really impactful way, you need to first touch upon the person with brand. First influence the person's thinking, first of all. So it's like walking down a street, right? We all drink Coca-Cola. Well, maybe some of you don't drink Coca-Cola. Probably drink one of Coca-Cola's brands, right? But we all know about Coca-Cola.
Yes.
Coca-Cola is embedded in our life. But we walk down the street day in, day out, and Coca-Cola's in the window, it's in the bus stop, it's in the, it's just everywhere, right? And the whole reason around that is Coca-Cola want us to think Coca-Cola next time we're thirsty. It's all subliminal, subliminal, if I could say.
That's the word.
Advertising. A bit too many B's there. And this is what we're talking about with recruitment marketing. We're not talking about advertising jobs. We're talking about putting out influential content that helps attract a group of people that share a similar opinion as your general business route forward, or your general business opinion. And that's impactful.
It's really impactful. But the challenge we've always got to make sure that we stick to with this journey of doing content and of doing, yes, we want to be the first person to think. We want to be the first person to be thought of for the right people. Now, the challenge with all the methods that you've applied to there is, from headhunting through to advertising, through to whatever, spraying, pray jobbing, is that what you've got to be careful of not doing is opening a funnel to the wrong people. So one of the great examples is when I adopted Cloud9 from a point of view of turned it into a social media and marketing kind of recruitment agency. I very quickly stopped using generalist job boards because they were getting me candidates. Look, I mean, they were getting me candidates, which is absolutely fine, but they were getting me candidates that were wrong more than they were getting me candidates that were right. Same with LinkedIn advertising. So to use it as a core exercise was a bad exercise, because it was, although I may fill a job or two out of it, I was also creating a funnel of people who were time consuming, not good for our brand, that we couldn't deal with all the responses and therefore gave a bad candidate experience, etc. So we funneled any adverts we did, we just funneled it down only marketing jobs, because they do only marketing jobs, right? And so they say only marketing jobs, which means you're not going to get a purchaser who accidentally lands on there, or a secretary who accidentally lands on there, an engineer. You're going to get marketing people, and it's using I'm very sort of keen on, and the same with headhunting, the same with, I do a lot of training on social approach and all that kind of stuff. And the approach has to be targeted and relevant. You've got to treat it's got to be the right audience that you're doing that content and things to. And if that means you're not dealing with volume, don't worry about the fact you're not dealing with volume. Worry only about the percentage of conversion that you're dealing with. Because to me, there was a really interesting Hung Lee put a thing out on LinkedIn a couple of days ago talking about, are we a bit too snobbish in recruitment that we won't use the big job boards and things like that? Isn't it okay to have a low conversion rate as long as we convert the jobs? And my point was, I don't think it is. That's all the stuff that has wrecked the recruitment industry. It's been carried into in-house as well as from agency as well, to go straight to market with job advertising. I know a company who've got 48-hour KPI timeline to make sure they get out on all the job boards and LinkedIn within 48 hours. Now, to me, that's the thing you should do after 4 or 5 days, when you realize, when you've identified that actually from your existing pool, you haven't quite found the candidates you wanted. So second thing, or maybe the last thing you do, is to then go to market with the advert. And to me, you've got to be thinking about where the actual funnels are. I mean, those marketing automation ones, the blog we wrote that we put on LinkedIn, but put through some LinkedIn groups on marketing automation. Yeah, groups still work. But as long as they're very focused, well, as long as I wouldn't put it on a group with 330,000 people in. Yeah. But the marketing automation groups that I was putting on had about 400 people, maybe 500 people in them. So they were very focused, well-managed groups. So we used that as part of our marketing. So the blog itself got only 178 views, compared to Doug's getting about 3,500, right? So it was a very small amount of views. That's all we needed. Didn't matter. Yeah. We don't need big view. So knowing the channels in which we put each of those things we're talking about and being very relevant through those channels means even the people who say it's not for me don't go, oh, Stop pissing me off by being in my screen all the time. You're making sure it's relevant content and relevant voice to the right relevant people rather than going mass markets. And
Sure.
that's my opinion on that.
No, totally,
real balance, isn't it, really, between and we all know that everything comes back to how well you do it. I mean, we can all do all we can all do all the things badly if we want to, and still make hires. Frankly, I mean, that can still happen. But I always believe recruitment is more than just filling a job. Recruitment has so many layers that are more than just the end result of putting a person in a job who needed a job to fill a desk where you needed to put somebody in a desk. I believe recruitment can be done way better and way more logical. I'd rather put a fan there and it take 2 weeks longer, but that person will hit running with passion and they'll stay there for 2-3 years because they want to, or they'll stay in the company for 2-3 years, rather than plonk somebody who was the first person available and the fastest speed, the shortest time to hire, all those phrases, and all that kind of stuff, but actually didn't really massively want to be there. Leave inside 12 months. And you go, we've got to go start that journey again.
To make the comparison, Steve, if you had a marketing team that attracted loads of leads for your sales team, filled their diary day in, day out.
Yeah.
But none of them were qualified leads and none of them were potential buyers.
Yeah.
Would that marketing team last? No. They would not last a week in any normal business.
No.
So let's start to draw this into conclusion. So what I've taken from today, kind of remind me if I've missed anything here. Right? Whenever we're talking about attracting fans, is what we're talking about doing is we're talking about gathering a tribe together, an audience together on social media that's interacting with us, that's being influenced by our messages before we think about recruiting them.
Yes.
Okay. Influencing them to think of us as employers of choice, or influence them to at least know about us and know about our culture before we reach out to them. One of the best ways of starting to do that is finding out what people are interested in, who they are interested in within the business, picking that person as a key figure to start your marketing off. Interacting with the people that already follow them and growing their following. And then using that activity to actually start to generate leads for who you're going to recruit. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Following on from that, it's the activity of always developing that pipeline and always finding new ways to get the right message out in front of the right people at the right time.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm taking from this conversation today.
Yeah.
That summary makes it all sound very easy.
It does. But you know, it's not difficult. I think it looks scary from the outset.
No, it is difficult. It is difficult. It absolutely is difficult. And that's why there's only a couple of people like you in the industry doing this. Okay. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Right. I think that actually bringing that forward into an organization is probably one of the most difficult parts. Having the leader understand the importance that they play in the brand of the organization, having their buy-in to say, yes, I will help you with this, keeping their commitment in that help, and then probably as importantly, being able to deliver the statistics and data back to that leader to say, this is the impact you're having, so that they continue to have that sort of influence. That's one of the more difficult parts.
Yeah.
Doing is easy. It's the how you do it is the difficult part.
It is. And do you know what? One of the things I've identified, leaders are very happy to be the subject matter. They don't always want to write it. Yeah. Sometimes you have to do the writing for them. And so it's advice to people who are maybe looking at this. A great example is earlier this year, I was working with a company called Star Counts, and the leader, Edwina Dunn, who's a very famous person in market research world, because she created the Tesco's Club card. She's a well-known figure within her industry. I wanted to use her as a centerpiece naturally for content, particularly because she's also the female lead CEO, and also we wanted to get more female software engineers into the organization. Anyway, but did she have time to write content? Did she want to write any content? No, she didn't. So don't presume that people will write content for you. If they won't write content for you, interview them. That's the alternative. Do an interview and you write the content, put the content out there and make them the star. That's the alternative way of doing it. The other aspect of this we have to remember through this process, and the only way you can make this program kind of work is that we have to remember that most people's affinity with an organization has nothing to do with jobs whatsoever. Our affinity with an organization is to do with their product. I don't even think it's to do with their culture very often, because when you're outside, you don't necessarily know the culture. You may know their vision, and you may know their product, and you may know their message that they put out there. Because obviously you're seeing the external story. We'll only heard their culture from internal stories. And so, but none of those things have anything to do with jobs. So if the first communication with those people that it is only about jobs, well, first communication to most people, if it's only about jobs, they'll only consider you relevant about jobs. It's making sure that the people you're communicating to have a natural affinity with the product, the company, and are already engaged, and they can see that it's a good place to work. Then you can bring jobs into the discussion. The problem is with recruitment people is we think only of one thing. The idea of that content is to gather agreements, gather accord, and then go, would you like to work? If you've read this far and you agree with them, would you like to work with? And I think that's very, very important. If we go out there with content that just says, we're hiring, we're a great company and we're hiring, you're not giving them any reason to engage and be fans of your organization, other than the fact they might have a job that you may or may not be suitable for. So that goes back to that, where the emotional connection and professional connection leads into the opportunity to want to work there. So that's very, very important to remember.
Fantastic.
In that process.
Absolutely brilliant. Steve, we are coming towards the head of the hour. You've given us an awful lot of very valuable content today, an awful lot of ideas on how to get started on recruitment marketing and doing that fan gathering. I think it's a potential to impact a lot of organizations. So if anybody has liked what you've been talking about and is thinking, how do I get started? Oh dear, I really love the idea. That's how do we implement an organization? Can they drop you a line? Can they drop you an email?
Yeah,
how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Link up with me on LinkedIn. And I think if you search for Steve Ward and Cloud9 or filter through Ian's friends, you'll find me. But yeah, absolutely. But feel free to drop me a message on there. I'm always happy to answer questions.
All right, good stuff. Right, so folks, that is bringing us to the end of this episode of the recruitment marketing by Rare Marketers. Steve is in the recruitment industry, guys. So maybe the title kind of misled slightly there, but
still place jobs.
Still place job, yeah. So this was meant to be about bringing real marketers on, but Steve is a real marketer. What he talks is sense. I think any good marketer would put a big rubber stamp on everything we have talked about today. So bring a great conversation. The next one we have is a chap called Alistair Lee. Alistair Lee, I don't know if you've seen him recently, but he has been so active in the recruitment space, talking about how he can help recruiters build $1 million sales funnels, $1 million desks, through systemizing and funnelizing our activity on a daily basis. An awful lot of what we talked about here, Steve, gather the awareness, transferred into education, help them consider, and then convert. Alistair does a lot of that building of the funnels as well. So, and he's a big proponent of Facebook ads and LinkedIn ads. So we're talking to him next, so we are. So I hope you join us along for that. But yeah, let's all say a big thank you to Steve, and everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers, folks. Bye now.
Bye-bye.